Everyone said you don't gamble with Nanga Parbat, the mountain with over 80 deaths and a summit rate below 10%. Yet Mara Klein was drawn here by an unfinished promise and the visual illusion of the White Mirror's perfect line. Her mentor died chasing it. She believed closure lived in its descent. But when calm skies hid the real danger, altitude stealing judgment with every breath, precision became illusion. What happened as her mind told her she was skiing downhill, but reality had other plans? The answer begins where the legend of the Killer Mountain meets Mara's personal reckoning. Nanga Parbat rises to 8,126 meters, its summit lost in thin air above the Karakoram foothills. The south face, called the Rupal face, towers nearly 4,600 meters from glacier to crest, the highest mountain wall on Earth. This is not a mountain that forgives mistakes. Since the first attempts in the 1930s, more than 80 climbers have died here. The nickname Killer Mountain was earned long before modern safety gear and satellite beacons. Most fatalities occur not in storms, but on clear days, when the mountain's scale and silence disguise its dangers. The Rupal face, with its steep snowfields and broken ice, has a summit success rate well below 10%. Climbers on this side face a relentless mix of rockfall, avalanches, and hidden crevasses. The smooth upper aprons, so tempting from a distance, often conceal unstable slabs and snow bridges that can collapse without warning. Even the most experienced alpinists have been caught off guard by the terrain's shifting moods. Early explorers described the southern precipice as unclimbable, a judgment that still echoes in the statistics. Every meter above base camp increases exposure to cold, hypoxia, and the simple risk of vanishing without a trace. On Nanga Parbat, the hazards are not just technical, they are absolute. The mountain's reputation is not legend, but a record written in lost lives and unfinished climbs. For those who approach its faces, respect is not a choice, but a matter of survival. The White Mirror route draws the eye from base camp, a streak of unbroken snow slashing down the Rupal face for 2,500 meters. In photographs, its upper apron gleams with a promise of smooth, direct descent. The average gradient sits near 70 degrees, steeper than most Black Diamond ski runs, steeper than many climbers would ever attempt on foot. For experts, this line carries a rare, almost magnetic pull. The surface appears flawless, a white ribbon wide enough to tempt even the most cautious. But what looks like an open highway is, in reality, a technical gauntlet. The White Mirror's upper apron hides a network of hazards beneath its polished skin. Crevasses run deep here, some masked by just inches of snow, others bridged by slabs that can collapse without warning. The snowpack, shaped by wind and sun, forms unstable layers, hard crust over faceted grains, perfect for slab avalanches. On a calm day, the entire face can seem frozen in place, but the physics remain unchanged. A single skier's weight can trigger a dull, spreading collapse, the classic W hump that signals a slab release. The technical grade of the White Mirror rivals the hardest mixed climbs. WI 5 for ice, M7 for rock and snow. Even the approach demands precision, with a single misstep leading into terrain traps invisible from above. The smoothness that seduces from below is the very feature that lures skiers off the scouted line, pulling them toward the center of the apron, right where the crevasse field lies deepest. For those who study the mountain's contours, the White Mirror is both a dream and a warning, beauty masking risk, and a single mistake separating descent from disaster. Mara Klein arrived at Nanga Parbat carrying more than skis and gear. Her mentor, an experienced alpinist, had died on this mountain in 2018, swept away by an avalanche at around 7,300 meters. That loss left Mara with a question that never resolved, a line unfinished, a promise unkept. She wasn't chasing headlines or sponsorships. The drive came from somewhere quieter, the need to finish what had been started, to write an ending where there had only been silence. The climb itself was made possible by hundreds of small donations. Over $120,000 had come in through crowdfunding, each name on the list a reminder that this was never a solo journey, even if it felt that way above the clouds. The expedition followed the structure most high-altitude teams rely on: a base camp at 3,600 meters, then a slow, methodical move through higher camps. Camp 1 at 6,000 meters, Camp 2 at 6,800 meters, Camp 3 at 7,400 meters. At each stop, routines kept the chaos at bay. Gear checks, weather briefings, and the steady presence of Sherpa Tenzin Lobsang helped anchor the climb in something like order. But Nanga Parbat does not allow for certainty. On the morning of the summit push, the team's rhythm broke. Tenzin, watching the wind whip spindrift across the upper face, made the call to turn back at 2:30 in the afternoon. Mara was left alone at the final camp, facing the last 1,000 meters without a partner. There was no debate, no drama, just a quiet exchange and the knowledge that the decision to continue would be hers alone. In that moment, the climb shifted from a shared effort to a solitary reckoning. The risk became personal, the mountain's silence answering only to her footsteps. Weather models promised calm. The ECMWF forecast, trusted by high-altitude teams, showed winds below 5 knots at the summit, a rare green light for Nanga Parbat. Radio sonde data, taken from a weather balloon launched that same morning, confirmed the pressure ridge holding steady. For Mara, the numbers matched the view. Blue sky, no spindrift, the kind of day climbers dream about and rarely see. She logged a summit bid for 1745, cutting it close, but believing the margin was enough. The reality at 8,000 meters was colder than any forecast. Actual air temperature at the summit hovered near -17 degrees Celsius, with the sun already low behind the Mazzino Ridge. In those last hours, the mountain's silence felt like permission. Good weather at altitude is a seduction. Clear air, no wind, and the illusion that risk has stepped aside. But the facts remain. Above 25,000 feet, oxygen drops to 1/3 of sea level, and exposure can kill in minutes. The mountain's hazards don't vanish when the wind stops. They simply hide behind the calm. A late summit always carries a cost. With each minute past 4 p.m., the descent window narrows. Shadows stretch across the Rupel face, flattening depth and blurring the line between safe snow and hidden crevasse. The cold deepens, and the body's reserves run out faster. Mara's timing log showed her at the summit nearly an hour after most teams would have turned around. The weather had held, but the margin for error had evaporated. The descent would begin in near-perfect stillness, under the false promise that the hardest part was already behind her. At 7,900 meters, Mara's oxygen saturation dropped to 66%, then slipped even lower as she started her descent. The numbers, logged by her wrist telemetry, tracked a body moving through the edge of survival. Above 25,000 feet, the brain rewrites its own rules. Decision-making slows by nearly 1/3, yet confidence can rise by 20%, a dangerous mismatch. Dr. Ana Vargas, a high-altitude neurologist, describes this as a kind of internal editing. The mind feels sharp, even as it quietly loses accuracy. Reaction times stretch. Simple calculations, distance, angle, speed become guesses, not measurements. Mara's summit voice note, recorded at 1804, was clear and focused, but her route log showed drift. Turns grew wider, pauses longer, corrections delayed. The gap between intention and action widened, with every meter lost. On the telemetry, heart rate spikes paired with brief hesitations, moments where the skis pointed off the planned line, then snapped back. Studies from the Hypoxia research group show these micro-errors compound above 7,500 meters, often without the climber noticing. The risk isn't just physical collapse, it's a creeping distortion, where the mountain's dangers fade into the background and the mind's version of the world becomes more convincing than reality. In these moments, the skier believes she is in control, even as the data tells another story. For Mara, the descent began with a sense of mastery, but the invisible work of thin air had already started to unravel her grip on the line. Mara's helmet cam recorded her voice, steady and certain. Dropping in, line looks clean. The data tells a different story. Her GPS track, meant to shadow the scouted descent, began to drift, first by a few meters, then by over 150. The line she believed she was skiing was not the line her body followed. Above 7,800 meters, with oxygen saturation scraping the low 60s, the mind starts to fill in gaps. Movements feel smooth, intentions seem sharp, but the actual route wavers. As Mara picked up speed, 24 kilometers per hour, faster than planned, her turns grew looser, her corrections more delayed. The telemetry shows a skier convinced she's carving the center of the white mirror, but the coordinates plot a gentle arc toward the far left, away from the flagged markers. The smoothness of the upper apron played its own trick. What looked like a safe, endless slope was a shell over a crevasse field. The snow beneath her skis had been wind-packed and sun-hardened, masking the true lay of the ground. The lure was subtle, the path of least resistance, the illusion of control. Mara's own words, caught on the cam, reinforced the gap. Feels perfect, just like we mapped it. But the numbers disagreed. Each second pulled her farther from the intended line, toward terrain that had never been probed, never been tested for stability. In high-altitude studies, this widening gap between perception and reality is well documented. Above 25,000 feet, confidence can outpace accuracy by a wide margin. Mara's descent, at first routine, became a case study in how thin air edits judgment. The apron's surface, so inviting from above, hid the fractures and hollows that define Nanga Parbat's deadliest traps. The next moment would erase the difference between belief and fact, a dull, spreading whump beneath her skis, the sound of the mountain reasserting its terms. Muffled, spreading thud broke the silence, an acoustic warning that never gave a second chance. Under Mara's skis, the surface layer of snow collapsed in less than a second, a 1.2-meter thick slab shearing across the apron. The sound, a dull whoomp, signaled the failure of the snowpack, energy rippling outward with the force of 3 million joules. The ground dropped away as if pulled from beneath her, skis suddenly weightless, the slope tilting into motion. There was no time to react, no margin for correction. The slab moved as a single, massive plate, carrying Mara with it, accelerating down the face. The sensation was not of skiing, but of being carried, control replaced by velocity, intention erased by the mountain's physics. The snow beneath fractured in a widening arc, the edges of the slab breaking free from the stable crust. Beneath the moving layer, the old weak snow collapsed into itself, swallowing any hope of self-arrest. The world narrowed to speed and noise, the hiss of sliding snow punctuated by the deep rolling thunder of the slab's progress. In those seconds, the illusion of mastery vanished. Mara was no longer a skier, but a passenger, swept toward the glacier's hidden traps. The line she had carefully mapped was gone, replaced by the unpredictable path of the avalanche. Each heartbeat marked another meter lost to gravity, the mountain reclaiming control. The descent, so meticulously planned, now belonged to the forces beneath her feet. The avalanche carried Mara nearly 300 meters down the face, ending in a violent stop against a fractured ice ledge. The ledge, a 30-meter drop above the glacier floor, trapped her in a narrow slot, walled by blue ice and snow debris. The temperature log from her beacon registered -25 degrees Celsius as night settled in. At this altitude, the cold is not just a backdrop, it becomes its own kind of predator. Her beacon sent a signal, but the glacier's geometry scrambled it. Multipath errors bounced the ping off the ice walls, creating a false location more than 200 meters from her actual position. Search and rescue teams, led by Captain Rashid Khalid of the Pakistani Army, received the transmission at 0230 local time, but the coordinates pointed to a dead end in the upper crevasse field. In the hours that followed, rescue protocols unfolded with methodical precision. Thermal imaging scans, drone sweeps, avalanche probes. None could penetrate the maze of ice that now separated Mara from the surface. Later analysis mapped the decisions that led to her entrapment. 4 key moments, each nearly correct, each just off enough to matter. The late descent, the deviation from the flagged line, the speed over the apron, and the trust in the beacon's reach. Statistically, 68% of fatal outcomes in high-altitude incidents on Nanga Parbat stem from a cascade of small misjudgments, not a single catastrophic error. Captain Khalid's audit concluded that the margin for survival was erased long before the rescue team arrived. The mountain's hazards, cold, isolation, and the indifference of the glacier finished what the avalanche began. There was no dramatic rescue, only a silent record of choices that, stacked together, left no way back. Every year, more climbers reach high-altitude summits, yet hypoxia remains invisible and underestimated. No device can override a mind convinced it's in control. As technology advances, the greatest unknown is still the brain above 8,000 meters. In the mountains and beyond, the line between confidence and reality can vanish in a breath. What do you think defines true safety at the edge? Share your thoughts below.